20 years ago, they were everything to each other. Now billionaire CEO Isaac Donovan never expected to find Leona Brooks scrubbing the floors of his company. Fate brought them back together, but can love survive the weight of time, secrets, and the worlds between them? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. The morning sun shone through the large windows of Donovan Enterprises, illuminating the glass and steel building that dominated the New York City skyline. At 38, Isaac Donovan had everything a man could want: a multi-billion-dollar company he'd built from scratch, a penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, and respect from everyone who mattered in the business world. Isaac adjusted his custom Italian suit as he stepped out of his private elevator. His assistant, Margaret, immediately approached with a tablet in hand. "Good morning, Mr. Donovan. The board is waiting for you in the conference room. And the new cleaning company started today. I've already received complaints that they're disrupting the work environment." Isaac nodded absently. "Tell the board I'll be there in 5 minutes, and about the cleaning staff, just make sure they understand our protocols." As Isaac walked through the gleaming lobby of his company headquarters, his mind was focused on the meeting ahead. The acquisition of a smaller tech firm was almost complete, adding another achievement to his already impressive portfolio. Everything was going perfectly, exactly as he had planned his life until he saw her. Time seemed to stop as Isaac froze mid-step. There, kneeling on the marble floor with a cleaning cloth in hand, was a woman he would recognize anywhere: Leona Brooks. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her face, though older now, still held the same gentle features he remembered from 20 years ago. She was wearing a gray uniform with the cleaning company's logo, methodically wiping the floor, completely unaware of his presence. "It can't be," he whispered to himself. Memories flooded back like a tidal wave. Summer nights under the stars in their small hometown of Cedar Springs, promises made beside the old oak tree at their high school, the tearful goodbye when he left for college on a full scholarship. They had been so young, so in love, with their whole lives ahead of them. Margaret cleared her throat. "Mr. Donovan, the board is waiting." But Isaac couldn't move. His eyes remained fixed on Leona, his Leona, now on her hands and knees cleaning his company's floors. As if sensing his gaze, Leona looked up. For a brief moment their eyes met. Recognition flashed across her face, followed by something else: shock, then what looked like pain. She quickly lowered her gaze and turned away, focusing intensely on her work. "Margaret, who hired the new cleaning company?" Isaac asked, his voice surprisingly unsteady. "Operations did last month. Budget cuts, you know. You approved it." Margaret looked confused. "Is something wrong?" "No, nothing's wrong." Isaac straightened his tie. "Tell the board I need to reschedule. Something urgent has come up." Margaret's eyes widened in surprise. Isaac Donovan never rescheduled board meetings, but she nodded and walked away. Isaac took a deep breath and approached Leona, who was still determinedly scrubbing the floor, her back to him. "Leona?" His voice was soft, uncertain. She stiffened but didn't look up. "I'm almost finished here, sir. I won't be in your way much longer." The formality in her voice felt like a punch to his gut. "Leona, it's me, Isaac." Slowly she stood up and faced him. Up close he could see the fine lines around her eyes, the weariness in her face. But her eyes, those deep brown eyes, were exactly as he remembered them. "I know who you are, Mr. Donovan. Everyone in this building knows who you are." Her voice was controlled, professional. "I can't believe it's you, after all these years." He wanted to reach out, to touch her hand, to make sure she was real, but something in her expression stopped him. 20 years, she said flatly. "It's been 20 years. A young supervisor from the cleaning company approached them. "Is there a problem here, Mrs. Brooks, Mr. Donovan?" Leona quickly shook her head. "No problem, I was just finishing up." "Mrs. Brooks?" Isaac couldn't help asking, feeling a strange tightness in his chest. "Ms., she corrected, still not meeting his eyes. "I never married." The supervisor looked between them, confused by the tension. "Ms. Brooks is one of our best employees, Mr. Donovan. I assure you any disruption will be minimal. Isaac barely heard him. Could you give us a moment, please? He asked, not taking his eyes off Leona. The supervisor nodded and walked away. For a moment they stood in silence, surrounded by the bustling activity of the lobby, yet somehow isolated in their own world. What happened, Leona? Isaac finally asked. Why are you working as a cleaner? She finished for him, a flash of defiance in her eyes. Not everyone gets to fulfill their dreams, Isaac. Some of us have to do what we can to survive. The bitterness in her voice was unmistakable. Isaac felt a wave of shame wash over him. I tried to find you, you know. After my first year away, I came back to Cedar Springs, but your mother said you'd moved. My mother died, Isaac. 6 months after you left. Her voice cracked slightly. I had to sell the house to pay for her medical bills. There was nothing left for college. Isaac felt as if the ground was shifting beneath his feet. I didn't know. I'm so sorry, Leona. If I had known, you would have what? She interrupted. Saved me? Sent money? It doesn't matter now. She began gathering her cleaning supplies. I need to finish my work. Some of us don't have the luxury of rescheduling meetings. As she turned to leave, Isaac gently caught her arm. Please, can we talk? After work, maybe? I just want to catch up. Leona looked down at his hand on her arm, and he quickly released her. There's nothing to catch up on, Isaac. You went your way, I went mine. It's ancient history. It doesn't have to be, he said softly. For a brief moment, something flickered in her eyes, a hint of the Leona he once knew, but it quickly disappeared, behind a wall of caution. I get off at 6, she finally said. There's a coffee shop across the street. I'll be there, Isaac promised, trying to contain the unexpected surge of hope he felt. Leona nodded curtly and walked away, leaving Isaac standing alone in the middle of his grand lobby, suddenly feeling like the building's impressive architecture was nothing but an empty shell. At precisely 6 o'clock, Isaac sat in the corner booth of the small coffee shop, nervously checking his watch every few minutes. He had changed out of his formal suit into something more casual, jeans and a simple button-down shirt, hoping to bridge the obvious gap between them. The coffee shop was nothing like the upscale establishments he usually frequented. It was modest but clean, filled with workers from nearby offices unwinding after a long day. At 6:10 the door opened, and Leona walked in. She had changed out of her work uniform into worn jeans and a faded blue sweater. Her hair was down now, falling past her shoulders in gentle waves. For a moment, she stood at the entrance, scanning the room. When her eyes found him, she hesitated before slowly making her way to his table. I wasn't sure you'd come, Isaac said as she sat down across from him. I wasn't sure either, she admitted. A waitress came over, and they both ordered coffee, black for him, with cream and sugar for her. Just like old times. You look good, Leona, Isaac said after the waitress left. It was true. Despite the obvious signs of a hard life, there was still a natural beauty about her that time hadn't erased. Please don't, she said quietly. No small talk, no fake compliments. Just say what you want to say, Isaac. Isaac leaned forward. What happened to us, Leona? We had plans. We were going to wait for each other. Leona's hands tightened around her coffee cup. Life happened. My mother got sicker after you left. The treatments took everything we had. After she died, I was alone, with a mountain of debt. College wasn't an option anymore. But why didn't you reach out to me? I would have helped. A bitter smile touched her lips. With what? You were a scholarship student yourself. And then, she paused. Your letters stopped coming. Isaac felt a knot form in his stomach. I wrote to you for months, Leona. When you didn't respond, I thought you'd moved on. Confusion crossed her face. I never got any letters after the first 3 months. Their coffees arrived, creating a momentary pause in the conversation. Isaac's mind was racing. He remembered writing to Leona weekly, then daily when she stopped responding. Eventually, heartbroken and assuming she had forgotten him, he had forced himself to move on. Your mother, he said slowly, a terrible suspicion forming. She never liked me, never thought I was good enough for you. Leona's eyes widened slightly. You think she kept your letters from me? I don't know, but something doesn't add up. They sat in silence, both processing the possibility that their separation might not have been what either of them had chosen. "It doesn't matter now," Leona finally said, though her voice lacked conviction. "That was another lifetime." "Tell me about your life," Isaac said gently. "What happened after everything?" Leona took a sip of her coffee before answering. "I worked whatever jobs I could find. Waitress, retail, house cleaner. I moved to the city about 10 years ago for better opportunities, but it's expensive here. I take night classes sometimes trying to get a degree, but it's slow going. And you never married?" Isaac couldn't help asking. She shook her head. "Came close once about 5 years ago, but it didn't work out." "I'm sorry." "Don't be, it wasn't right." She looked at him directly for the first time. "What about you? I see your face in business magazines at the checkout counter, the self-made billionaire. Quite the success story." There was no malice in her words, just a statement of fact, but Isaac felt oddly ashamed of his success. "The company took off faster than I expected," he said. "I got lucky with some investments, made the right connections. And your personal life? No Mrs. Donovan waiting at home?" Isaac shook his head. "No, there have been relationships, but nothing." He hesitated. "Nothing like what we had." Leona looked away, and Isaac could see she was fighting to maintain her composure. "Don't do that," she whispered. "Don't pretend what we had was so special when you moved on so easily." "But I didn't," he insisted, reaching across the table but stopping short of touching her hand. "Leona, I built all of this trying to be worthy of you. I thought if I could become successful enough, I could go back to Cedar Springs and find you. But when I did go back, you were gone." She looked skeptical. "You're saying you built a billion-dollar empire for me? I'm not that naive anymore, Isaac." "Not for you," he corrected. "Because of you. Because you always believed I could do more than anyone else thought possible. You were the only one who ever saw that in me." Leona's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "It doesn't change anything. We're different people now." "Are we?" Isaac asked softly. "Because sitting here with you feels like coming home after being lost for 20 years. A tear escaped and rolled down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away. "I should go. This isn't a good idea." As she stood up, Isaac felt panic rising in his chest. He couldn't lose her again, not when he'd just found her. "Leona, please. Can I see you again?" She hesitated, her hand gripping the back of the chair. "Why, what's the point?" "Because I need to know if what I've been feeling all these years is real or just a memory. Don't you want to know too?" Something shifted in her expression, a crack in the wall she had built around herself. "I don't know, Isaac. This is all too sudden. Just dinner, one dinner. And if after that you never want to see me again, I'll respect your decision." Leona looked at him for a long moment, seemingly searching for something in his face. Finally, she nodded. "One dinner. That's it." Relief flooded through him. "Thank you." As she turned to leave, Isaac called after her. "Leona, I never forgot." "You not for a single day." She didn't respond, but he saw her pause briefly before pushing the door open and disappearing into the evening crowd. Isaac sat back down, his heart pounding. The universe had given him a second chance, and he was determined not to waste it. Whatever it took, he would prove to Leona that some loves were meant to stand the test of time, even when time itself had been their greatest enemy. The next morning, Isaac arrived at his office earlier than usual. He had barely slept, his mind replaying his conversation with Leona over and over. "Margaret, I need information on our cleaning service contract," he said as his assistant walked in. Margaret looked surprised, but didn't question him. "I'll have it on your desk in an hour. And I need to make some changes to my schedule. Clear my evenings for the next week. All of them. But sir, you have the charity gala tomorrow and the meeting with the Japanese investors on Thursday evening. Reschedule what you can. Send my apologies for the rest." Isaac's tone made it clear the matter wasn't up for discussion. Throughout the morning, Isaac found himself repeatedly glancing at the lobby through his office windows, hoping to catch a glimpse of Leona. But she was nowhere to be seen. By afternoon, Margaret had provided him with the information he requested. The cleaning company, Budget Commercial Cleaning Services, was a small operation that primarily employed people with limited education or employment history, people who needed a second chance. Isaac made a few calls and arranged to meet with the owner the following day, not to complain but to learn more about their employee structure, and specifically about one employee in particular. As evening approached, Isaac found himself walking through the building, making his way to the lower floors where the cleaning staff would be preparing to start their shift. He felt oddly nervous, like a teenager again. He found Leona in a small break room putting on her work gloves. Her hair was tied back again and she looked tired. "Isaac," she said, clearly surprised to see him. "What are you doing down here?" Few other cleaners looked up, curious about the well-dressed man who seemed out of place in their area. "I was hoping to catch you before your shift," he said. "About dinner. Are you free tomorrow night?" Leona glanced at her co-workers who were now pretending not to listen. "I have a double shift tomorrow. Thursday would work better." "Thursday it is," he smiled, aware of the eyes watching them. "I'll pick you up at 7. Where should I meet?" "Are you?" Leona hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of him coming to her home. "I'll meet you somewhere. Where are we going?" "It's a surprise, but nothing too fancy, I promise." He could see she was worried about fitting in at one of the high-end restaurants he usually frequented. "I don't like surprises," she said flatly. Isaac smiled. "You used to." A flicker of the old Leona appeared in her eyes. "Fine, but nothing extravagant." "I'll meet you at the coffee shop at 7, he conceded. "And Leona, thank you for giving me this chance." She nodded briefly before turning. Back to her preparations, Isaac left, aware of the whispers that erupted behind him. Back in his office, Isaac stared out at the city skyline, watching as the buildings lit up against the darkening sky. For 20 years, he had pursued success with single-minded determination, believing it would fill the void Leona had left. Now she was back in his life, and nothing else seemed to matter. But he knew winning her trust wouldn't be easy. The wall she had built around her heart was strong, reinforced by years of struggle and disappointment. Breaking through would require more than charm or grand gestures. It would require proving that this time he wouldn't walk away. As night fell over the city, Isaac made a silent promise to himself and to the memory of what they once shared. This time, he would get it right. This time, he would fight for what truly mattered, because some loves deserved a second chance, and theirs, interrupted but never truly ended, was definitely one of them. Thursday evening arrived faster than Leona expected. Standing in front of her small bathroom mirror, she studied her reflection with critical eyes. She had changed outfits 3 times already, unsure what was appropriate for dinner with a billionaire, even if he had promised nothing fancy. She finally settled on a simple navy blue dress she'd bought years ago for a job interview. It wasn't new or expensive, but it was the nicest thing she owned. Her apartment was tiny, located in one of the less desirable neighborhoods of the city. The building was old, with peeling paint and unreliable heating, but it was what she could afford on her salary. As she applied a touch of lipstick, her phone rang. It was her friend and neighbor, Rita. "So you're really going through with this date with Mr. Moneybags?" Rita asked without preamble. "It's not a date," Leona insisted. "It's just clearing the air. And don't call him that." Rita sighed. "Honey, I've known you for 5 years and I've never seen you this worked up over clearing the air. This guy obviously meant something to you." "That was a long time ago," Leona said, though her racing heart suggested otherwise. "Just be careful. Men like him don't usually cross the tracks to our side of town unless they want something." "Isaac isn't like that," Leona found herself, defending him, then wondered why she felt so certain after all these years. After hanging up, Leona grabbed her worn purse and jacket. As she locked her apartment door, she tried to ignore the flutter of anticipation in her stomach. It was just dinner, nothing more. Isaac arrived at the coffee shop 20 minutes early, nervously checking his watch every few minutes. He had spent hours planning this evening, wanting everything to be perfect without being overwhelming. He had chosen to wear casual clothes again, dark jeans and a blue button-down shirt that he remembered Leona once saying matched his eyes. When she walked through the door at exactly 7 o'clock, Isaac felt his breath catch. She wasn't dressed extravagantly, just a simple blue dress that highlighted her natural beauty. but to him she outshone every woman he'd dated in the past 20 years. "You look beautiful," he said as she approached. Leona offered a small smile. "Thank you, so where are we going?" "It's not far," Isaac assured her. "We can walk if that's okay." As they stepped outside, Leona noticed a sleek black car parked nearby, a driver standing attentively beside it. "I thought we were walking." "We are," Isaac said. "The car's just for later, if you need it." They walked side by side, leaving a careful distance between them. The early evening air was cool but pleasant. Isaac led them away from the busier streets toward a quieter neighborhood. "I hope you still like Italian food," he said as they turned a corner. "I do," she nodded. "Some things don't change." They arrived at a small, unassuming restaurant tucked between a bookstore and a florist. The sign simply read, "Marco's." "This place has been here for over 40 years, Isaac explained as he held the door open for her. "The owner, Marco, makes everything from scratch. Best pasta in the city, but it's still a neighborhood secret." Inside, the restaurant was warm and inviting, with checkered tablecloths and soft lighting. An older man with a thick Italian accent greeted Isaac like an old friend. "Isaac! It's been too long." The man embraced him warmly. "Marco, this is Leona," Isaac introduced. "An old friend." Marco's eyes twinkled as he looked between them. "Ah, a special friend, I see. Come, I have your table ready." He led them to a quiet corner booth partially secluded by a wooden partition covered in ivy. It was intimate without being too romantic, the perfect balance. "How do you know this place?" Leona asked after they were seated. "It doesn't seem like your usual style," Isaac smiled. "I found it during my first year in the city, when I was just starting out. I couldn't afford anything fancy, but I wanted good food. Marco let me wash dishes when I couldn't pay the bill one night." Leona looked surprised. "You washed dishes?" "For almost 6 months," Isaac admitted. "I was broke trying to get my first business off the ground. Marco fed me and let me work it off. When things finally took off, I tried to buy the restaurant for him, but he refused. Said some things weren't meant to be businesses, they were meant to be homes." Something in Leona's expression softened. This was a side of Isaac she hadn't expected, a reminder of the boy she once knew, before he became the billionaire businessman. Their conversation flowed more easily as dinner progressed. They shared memories of their hometown, carefully avoiding the painful subject of their separation. Leona found herself laughing as Isaac recounted stories of his early business failures. "So there I was," he continued, "trying to convince this investor that my software was revolutionary when the entire system crashed. Complete blackout, he just got up and walked out without saying a word." Leona couldn't help smiling. "But you obviously bounced back." "Eventually," Isaac nodded. "After about a dozen more failures, success didn't happen overnight despite what the magazines say." As they finished their main course, Leona found herself relaxing more than she had in years. There was something comforting about being with someone who knew her before life had hardened her. "Tell me about your classes," Isaac said as Marco brought them dessert, homemade tiramisu that he insisted they try. Leona hesitated. "It's nothing exciting, just basic business courses at the community college. I'm trying to get an associate's degree, maybe move into office work eventually." "That's not nothing," Isaac said seriously. "That's determination. I admire that." Leona looked down at her dessert. "It's taking forever. 1 or 2 classes per semester is all I can manage with my work schedule. At this rate, I'll graduate when I'm 50. "But you'll graduate," Isaac said softly. "That's what matters." Their eyes met across the table, and for a moment, the years between them seemed to disappear. Leona was the first to look away. "Why did you really want to have dinner with me, Isaac?" she asked, her voice quiet but direct. "Is it guilt? Curiosity? What?" Isaac took a deep breath. "Honestly, when I saw you in my building, it felt like the universe was giving me a second chance. All these years, I've been successful by every standard except the one that mattered. I've never been as happy as I was when we were together." Leona's eyes widened at his candor. "People change, Isaac. We're not those teenagers anymore." "I know," he acknowledged, "but some things don't change. The way I felt about you, the way..." I still feel when I'm with you. That hasn't changed. Leona sat in stunned silence. This wasn't what she had expected. She had prepared herself for polite conversation, maybe some nostalgic reminiscing, not this raw honesty. "It's too much," she finally said. "You can't just walk back into my life after 20 years and expect things to pick up where we left off." "I don't," Isaac assured her. "I know it's not that simple, but I'm asking for a chance, Leona. A chance to get to know the woman you've become, and for you to know who I am now." Before she could respond, her phone rang. Leona checked it and frowned. "I have to take this. It's my supervisor from work." She stepped away from the table to answer the call. Isaac watched as her expression grew increasingly concerned. When she returned, her face was pale. "What's wrong?" he asked. "That was Mike from work. There's been a change in the cleaning company's contract with your building. Starting next week, they're bringing in a different crew. Our team is being reassigned to other buildings." She looked directly at him, her eyes accusing. "Did you do this?" Isaac looked genuinely confused. "No, of course not. I had nothing to do with that." "Really? Because it seems like quite a coincidence that after 20 years of nothing, you reappear in my life and suddenly my job changes." "Leona, I swear I didn't do this. In fact, I met with the cleaning company owner yesterday to make sure your position was secure." She stared at him, trying to determine if he was telling the truth. "Then who did?" Isaac thought for a moment, a suspicion forming. "My brother, James. He oversees operations while I handle the strategic side of the business. He must have made the decision." "Your brother?" Leona asked. "Why would he do that?" Isaac's expression darkened. "Because he saw us talking. James has always been protective of my image. He probably thinks having a personal connection to a member of the cleaning staff is inappropriate." Leona's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "So, I'm an embarrassment to your image now? This is exactly why this dinner was a mistake." "No, Leona, that's not what I meant. James is wrong. I'll fix this, I promise." But Leona was already gathering her purse. "I don't need you to fix anything. I've been taking care of myself for 20 years without your help." As she stood to leave, Isaac gently caught her hand. "Please, don't go. Not like this." For a moment she hesitated, the warmth of his hand on hers triggering memories of another time, another life. Then she pulled away. "Goodbye, Isaac." She walked out of the restaurant, leaving Isaac staring after her, his heart heavy with the realization that the past wasn't the only obstacle between them. The present, his wealth, her struggles, his position, her pride, created a chasm perhaps too wide to cross. The following morning, Isaac stormed into his brother's office without knocking. James Donovan looked up from his computer, surprised by the interruption. "We need to talk," Isaac said, his voice controlled but tight with anger. James leaned back in his chair, a slight smile on his face. "About what? The Miller acquisition? Because I've already—" "About the cleaning contract," Isaac interrupted. "Why did you change the crew assignment?" James's expression shifted to one of practiced innocence. "It was a simple business decision. The current team wasn't meeting our standards." "That's not true, and you know it," Isaac said, placing his hands on his brother's desk and leaning forward. "This is about Leona Brooks, isn't it?" James sighed, dropping the pretense. "So that's her name, the woman I saw you talking to in the lobby." He stood up, matching his brother's stance. "Yes, it's about her. Do you have any idea how it looks? When the CEO of Donovan Enterprises is seen fraternizing with the cleaning staff." "Fraternizing?" Isaac repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "She's an old friend." "An old friend who happens to be scrubbing our floors?" James raised an eyebrow. "Come on, Isaac. We have a reputation to maintain. The board wouldn't approve." "I don't care what the board thinks about my personal life," Isaac said firmly. "And I didn't build this company to become the kind of person who judges others based on their job title." James studied his brother's face. "This is more than just an old friendship, isn't it? Who is she to you, really?" Isaac straightened up, taking a deep breath. "She's the woman I was in love with before I left Cedar Springs, the one I never forgot." James looked genuinely surprised. "The girl from your hometown? The one you used to talk about when we first became roommates in college?" Isaac nodded. "Yes, and I want that cleaning contract reinstated immediately. Her team stays in this building. Even if I did that, it wouldn't change anything, James pointed out. She's still a cleaner, and you're still Isaac Donovan. Those worlds don't mix, brother. They did once, Isaac said quietly, and they can again. Just reinstate the contract. James hesitated, then nodded. Fine, but think carefully about what you're doing. Not just for the company, but for yourself and for her. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for people from our past is to leave them there. Isaac turned to leave, but stopped at the door. One more thing. Stay out of my personal life from now on. I mean it, James. As he walked back to his office, Isaac's mind was racing. James had always been the practical one, focused on appearances and reputation. In many ways, his brother's business sense had helped Donovan Enterprises grow as rapidly as it had. But sometimes James forgot that success wasn't just about profit margins and public perception. Isaac picked up his phone and dialed the owner of the cleaning company himself, ensuring that Leona's team would remain assigned to the Donovan building. Then he called Margaret. I need you to find Leona Brooks's address, he said without preamble. The woman from the cleaning crew, Margaret asked, surprising Isaac with her knowledge. Yes, how did you know about her? Margaret's voice held a hint of amusement. Sir, the entire building is talking about how you rescheduled a board meeting to talk to her. People notice things. Isaac sighed. Just find her address, please. And, Margaret, this stays between us. Of course, sir. An hour later, Isaac was standing outside a rundown apartment building in one of the city's struggling neighborhoods. The contrast between this place and his own luxury penthouse couldn't have been more stark. This was Leona's reality, the life she'd been living while he enjoyed the fruits of his success. He approached her apartment door and knocked. For several long moments, there was no response. He was about to knock again when the door finally opened. Leona stood there in jeans and a faded t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked surprised to see him. How did you find me? She asked. I asked, he said simply. Can I come in, please? Leona hesitated, then stepped aside. Isaac entered a small, neat apartment. It was clean but sparse, with second-hand furniture and few personal touches. A stack of textbooks sat on a small table in the corner, next to a worn laptop. Your brother's office called this morning, Leona said, closing the door. They said there had been a mistake and our assignment wasn't changing after all. It wasn't a mistake, Isaac admitted. James changed the assignment because he saw us talking. He thought it was inappropriate. Leona's expression hardened. Because I'm the help? Because he's an idiot, Isaac corrected. But I fixed it. I don't need you fighting my battles, Isaac. I know you don't. But this was my battle too. My brother had no right to interfere. Leona crossed her arms. Why are you here? Really? Isaac took a deep breath. Because I couldn't let last night end the way it did. Because I need you to know that I don't care what anyone thinks about us reconnecting. And because, he paused, gathering his courage, because I never stopped caring about you, Leona. Never. Leona's eyes filled with unexpected tears. Don't say things like that. You don't know me anymore. Then let me know you, he said, taking a step toward her. Let me into your life, Leona. Not to change it or fix it, but to be part of it. She wiped away a tear that had escaped. You live in a penthouse, Isaac. I live here. You run a billion-dollar company. I clean floors. How could this possibly work? I don't know, he admitted honestly. But I know I have to try. Don't you feel it too? This connection between us, it's still there. Leona turned away, moving to the window that overlooked a brick wall of the adjacent building. Even if I did feel something, it doesn't change reality. Your world would never accept me. I don't care about my world, Isaac said, following her to the window. I care about you. It's not that simple. It can be, he insisted. Just give us a chance. One real chance. Leona turned to face him, her expression a mix of longing and fear. What would that even look like? Dating the CEO while I clean his building? The gossip alone would be unbearable. Then quit, Isaac said impulsively. Leona's eyes widened. Quit my job and do what? Live off your charity? No, of course not. But you're studying business, right? Let me help you find a position that uses those skills, something that challenges you. So you can rescue me? Her voice was defensive. The billionaire saves the poor cleaning lady. I have my pride, Isaac. This isn't about saving you, Isaac said firmly. This is about giving you the opportunities you should have had 20 years ago, the ones that were taken from you when your mother got sick. Leona was silent for a long moment. Even if I wanted to, I can't just quit. I have bills to pay, rent due next week, tuition for next semester. Let me help, Isaac pleaded, not as charity but as an investment in your future. An investment? Leona raised an eyebrow. A loan, then, Isaac amended. You can pay me back when you're established in your new career. With interest, if that makes you feel better. Despite herself, Leona laughed, a small, genuine laugh that made Isaac's heart soar. You're impossible, you know that. I've been called worse, he smiled. Just think about it. Please. Their eyes met, and the electricity between them was undeniable. For a brief moment, Isaac thought she might let him kiss her. But Leona stepped back. I need time, she said softly. This is all happening so fast. Isaac nodded, understanding. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere this time, I promise. As he turned to leave, Leona called after him. Isaac, thank you for coming here, for caring enough to try. He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Always, Leona, always. As Isaac left the apartment building, he felt a lightness in his step that had been missing for years. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in 2 decades, it felt right. Leona was back in his life, and no matter what obstacles stood in their way, different worlds, societal expectations, or his own brother's disapproval, he was determined to prove that some connections were worth fighting for. Because in the end, wealth and success meant nothing if you had no one to share them with. And Isaac had finally found the one person who had always made his life complete. 2 weeks later, Leona stood nervously in front of the Donovan Enterprises building, dressed in a new suit she'd purchased for the occasion. After much thought and several more conversations with Isaac, she had decided to take a chance, not on him, not yet, but on herself. Today was her interview for an entry-level position in the company's customer service department. Isaac had kept his word about not directly interfering. The position was one she was qualified for with her, partial business studies, and she would be interviewed like any other candidate. As she walked through the same lobby she had cleaned just weeks before, Leona held her head high, ignoring the curious glances from staff who recognized her from her cleaning job. This was her chance to start over, to prove to herself and to Isaac that she was capable of more. The interview went better than she had expected. The department manager, a no-nonsense woman named Sandra, seemed impressed by Leona's determination and practical experience. You've taken quite an unusual path, Sandra commented, reviewing Leona's resume. Not many people transition from cleaning staff to customer service. I believe that gives me a unique perspective, Leona replied confidently. I understand the importance of every role in a company, and I know how to work hard without complaint. Sandra nodded approvingly. We'll be in touch by the end of the week. As Leona exited the interview room, she nearly collided with James Donovan in the hallway. He recognized her immediately, his expression cool and assessing. Ms. Brooks isn't it, my brother's friend. Mr. Donovan, Leona acknowledged, refusing to be intimidated. Yes, I'm a friend of Isaac's. James glanced at her interview attire. And now applying for a position here. How convenient. I applied for a position I'm qualified for, Leona stated firmly, and I intend to earn it just like everyone else. Something in her direct gaze must have impressed James, because his expression shifted slightly. I see why my brother is so taken with you. You have spirit. I have more than that, Leona responded. I have determination and integrity. Your brother sees that. I hope you will too. Without waiting for his response, Leona continued down the hallway, her back straight and her head high. She hadn't come this far to be intimidated by anyone, not even the second most powerful man in Donovan Enterprises. As she left the building, Leona's phone buzzed with a text from Isaac. Dinner tonight to celebrate your interview? She smiled, and typed back, let's wait until there's something to celebrate. His response came immediately. There already is. You took a chance. That's worth celebrating. Looking up at the towering building behind her, Leona felt a mixture of fear and hope. Taking a chance on a new job was one thing. Taking a chance on Isaac, on them, was another matter entirely. But for the first time in years, she was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, some dreams weren't too late to pursue, and some loves weren't meant to stay in the past. 3 days after her interview, Leona received the call she had been hoping for. She got the job. Starting salary was modest, but significantly better than what she earned as a cleaner, with regular hours that would allow her to take more classes at the community college. That evening, she and Isaac celebrated at Marco's restaurant. The old Italian greeted them warmly, treating them like regular customers already. To new beginnings, Isaac said, raising his glass of wine. Leona clinked her glass against his. New beginnings, she echoed, a smile warming her face. You know, Isaac said, I had nothing to do with this job. Sandra told me you impressed her with your practical approach and determination. Her words, not mine. I know, Leona nodded. She made that very clear during my second interview. Said she didn't care if I was friends with the CEO. If I couldn't do the job, I wouldn't last a week. Isaac laughed. That sounds like Sandra. She's been with the company since the early days. One of the few people who still calls me out when I'm wrong. I like her already, Leona said with a grin. As they enjoyed their meal, Leona couldn't help noticing how natural it felt to be with Isaac. Despite the years and vastly different life experiences that separated them, conversation flowed easily between them. It was as if some essential connection had remained intact, weathering the storms of separation and time. When do you start? Isaac asked as they shared dessert. Monday, Leona replied. I gave notice at the cleaning company yesterday. How did they take it? Better than I expected. My supervisor said he'd been wondering when I'd find something that used my brain more than my back. Isaac's expression grew serious. Leona, I want to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. She set down her fork. Suddenly nervous, went, what is it? Are you taking this job because you want it or because you think it's what I want? The question caught her off guard. I want it, she said after a moment. It's a step toward what I've been working for with my classes. Why would you think otherwise? Isaac reached across the table, gently taking her hand. Because I know you. You've always put others before yourself, and I don't want you to feel pressured to change your life because of me. Leona felt a rush of emotion at his words, at the realization that after all these years, he still understood a fundamental truth about her. I'm doing this for me, she assured him, but I might not have had the courage to try without you reappearing in my life. He squeezed her hand. That's all I needed to hear. As they left the restaurant, a light rain began to fall. Isaac opened a large umbrella sheltering them both as they walked slowly back toward the main avenue where his car waited. I have another question, Isaac said, his voice slightly hesitant. You're full of questions tonight, Leona teased. This one's important. He stopped walking, turning to face her under the umbrella. The rain created a curtain around them, a private world in the middle of the busy city. Now that we'll be working in the same building, people will talk about us. Leona nodded slowly. I know. So I need to know, what are we, Leona? Friends? Something more? I don't want to presume, but I also don't want to pretend I don't feel what I feel for you. Leona looked up at him, raindrops catching in her eyelashes. I don't know yet, she answered honestly. I care about you, Isaac. I think I always have, but there's still so much between us, 20 years of separate lives, different worlds. I need time. Instead of looking disappointed, Isaac smiled. Time is something I can give, as much as you need. Impulsively, Leona reached up and touched his cheek. Thank you for understanding. For a moment, they stood there in the rain, close, enough to kiss but held apart by the ghosts of their past and the uncertainties of their future. Then Isaac offered his arm, and they continued their walk, each lost in thoughts of what might be possible. Leona's first week at Donovan Enterprises passed in a blur of training sessions, new faces, and systems to learn. She was assigned to a team handling client communications, and though the learning curve was steep, she tackled it with the same determination she brought to everything in her life. She rarely saw Isaac during work hours. His office was on the top floor, while customer service occupied the third floor. When they did cross paths in the lobby or cafeteria, they exchanged friendly but professional greetings, aware of the curious eyes following their interactions. Friday afternoon, Leona was exhausted, but satisfied with her first week. As she was gathering her things to leave, her desk phone rang. "Customer service, this is Leona," she answered professionally. "Ms. Brooks, this is Patricia from the executive floor. Mr. Donovan would like to see you in his office before you leave today." Leona's heart skipped. "Mr. Donovan?" she asked, suddenly uncertain which brother was summoning her. "Isaac Donovan," Patricia clarified. "Whenever you're ready, just come up to the 30th floor." As Leona rode the elevator to the executive floor, she couldn't help feeling nervous. She and Isaac had kept their personal relationship separate from work all week. What could he want to discuss in his office? Patricia, a polished older woman with silver hair, greeted her with a warm smile and led her to Isaac's office. The space was impressive. Large windows offering panoramic views of the city, modern furniture, and walls lined with awards and business magazines featuring Isaac on the cover. Isaac was standing by the window when she entered, his back to the door. He turned at the sound of her arrival, his face lighting up with a smile. "Leona, thank you for coming up. Please have a seat." She sat in one of the comfortable chairs facing his desk, instantly aware of how this setting emphasized the differences in their positions. He, the powerful CEO, she, the new customer service representative. "Is everything okay?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Isaac sat on the edge of his desk rather than behind it, reducing some of the formality between them. "Everything's fine. I just wanted to check how your first week went. We haven't had much chance to talk." Leona relaxed slightly. "It's been good. Challenging, but in a good way. The team has been welcoming. No issues? No one giving you a hard time because of our connection?" "A few curious looks," she admitted. "Some whispers, but nothing I can't handle." Isaac nodded, looking relieved. "Good. I've been worried. James mentioned that there might be talk." Leona straightened in her chair. "Your brother has been monitoring me." "Not monitoring," Isaac quickly corrected. "He simply heard things. Office gossip spreads fast." "What kind of gossip?" Leona asked, her defenses rising. Isaac sighed. "The usual nonsense. That you only got the job because of your connection to me, that we're—" He hesitated. "That we're what?" Leona pressed. "Involved," Isaac finished. "Romantically." Leona felt her cheeks warm. "I see. I wanted to make sure it wasn't making things difficult for you," Isaac explained. "The last thing I want is for you to be uncomfortable here." "I can handle gossip," Leona said firmly. "I've dealt with worse." Isaac studied her face for a moment, then smiled. "I never doubted that. You're the strongest person I know, Leona." The sincerity in his voice touched her deeply. Before she could respond, there was a knock at the door and James entered without waiting for an invitation. "Isaac, we need to discuss the—" "Oh." He stopped short when he saw Leona. "Mrs. Brooks, I didn't realize you were in a meeting." "Not a meeting," Isaac said, his voice cooling noticeably. "We were just talking." James's eyes moved between them, his expression unreadable. "In your office, at the end of the business day. Just talking." "Yes," Isaac said firmly. "Is there something you needed, James?" "The Chen proposal needs your signature before the weekend," James said, placing a folder on Isaac's desk. "But it can wait until you're finished here." The implication in his tone was clear, and Leona stood up abruptly. "I should go. Thank you for checking in, Mr. Donovan." Isaac shot his brother an irritated look before turning back to Leona. "Of course, Ms. Brooks. Have a good weekend." As Leona moved toward the door, James made no effort to step aside, forcing her to squeeze past him. She could feel his calculating gaze following her. "Ms. Brooks," he called after her, a word of advice. "In a company this size, appearances matter. More than you might think." Leona paused, turning back to face him. Thank you for your concern, Mr. Donovan, but I've never much cared for appearances. I prefer substance. With that, she walked out, her head high despite the trembling in her hands. Behind her, she could hear the brothers' voices rising in what sounded like the beginning of an argument. In the elevator, Leona leaned against the wall, trying to calm her racing heart. James Donovan clearly disapproved of her relationship with Isaac, whatever that relationship might be, and he had the power to make her life at Donovan Enterprises very difficult. But she hadn't survived 20 years of struggle by backing down from challenges. If James thought she would be easily intimidated, he was about to learn otherwise. The following week brought new challenges. Leona arrived Monday morning to find her desk had been moved from its central location in the customer service department to a small corner near the supply closet. Her computer had been replaced with an older model, and her phone now had a persistent static that made client calls difficult. Her team leader, Mark, seemed apologetic but helpless. It came from upstairs, he explained quietly. Some reorganization thing I tried to push back, but James Donovan's orders trump yours, Leona finished for him. It's okay, Mark, I understand. Over the next few days, the pattern continued. Files she needed mysteriously disappeared. Her access to certain databases was inexplicably revoked. Lunch invitations from co-workers became less frequent as people began to worry about being associated with her. Leona said nothing to Isaac. This was her battle to fight, and running to him would only prove James right, that she was using her connection to Isaac for special treatment. On Thursday afternoon, Leona was struggling with a particularly difficult client call, the static on her line making communication nearly impossible, when James appeared in the customer service department. He moved through the space like a visiting dignitary, nodding politely to staff members who straightened in their chairs at his approach. He stopped at Leona's desk just as she was apologizing to the client for the poor connection. "Ms. Brooks," James said loudly enough for nearby colleagues to hear, "a moment of your time, please." Leona held up a finger, indicating she needed to finish the call. James's eyes narrowed, but he waited, watching as she did her best to resolve the client's issue, despite the technical difficulties. After she hung up, Leona turned to him with a professional smile. "How can I help you, Mr. Donovan?" "I'm conducting a department review," he said smoothly. "I notice you've been having some equipment issues." "Nothing I can't handle," Leona replied evenly. James glanced around at her isolated workspace. "And this location? Is it conducive to your productivity?" Leona met his gaze directly. "I can do my job from anywhere, Mr. Donovan." A hint of something, perhaps respect, flickered in James's eyes. "Impressive resilience, Ms. Brooks. Tell me, how long do you think you can maintain it?" "As long as necessary," she answered without hesitation. James leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You know why this is happening, don't you? It's not personal, it's business. My brother has worked too hard to build this company to have it compromised by distractions." "Is that what I am? A distraction?" "You're a complication," James corrected. "One that could be easily resolved if you simply moved on. I'd be happy to provide an excellent reference for a position at another company." Leona felt anger rising, but kept her voice controlled. "I appreciate your concern, Mr. Donovan, but I earned this position and I intend to keep it." James straightened, adjusting his perfectly tailored suit. "As you wish, but remember, everyone has a breaking point. I wonder what yours will be." As he walked away, Leona's hands clenched into fists beneath her desk. She had faced hardship before, poverty, loss, the crushing of youthful dreams. But this calculated campaign to drive her out was testing her in new ways. That evening, as she packed up to leave, Mark approached her desk. "Tough day?" he asked sympathetically. Leona sighed. "Tough week." Mark glanced around to ensure they wouldn't be overheard. "Look, I don't know what's going on between you and the Donovan brothers, and I don't need to know. But the team likes you, Leona. You're good at this job. If there's anything we can do to help..." His support touched her deeply. "Thank you, Mark. Just knowing I have allies here means a lot. As Leona left the building, she found Isaac waiting beside his car at the curb. Seeing him there, clearly waiting for her despite the risk of being seen together, made her heart skip. "Need a ride?" he asked with a gentle smile. "What are you doing here?" she asked, glancing around at the departing employees who were trying not to stare. "I missed you," he said simply. "And I thought you might need a friend tonight." The sincerity in his eyes broke through the walls she'd been building all week. A friend with a car sounds pretty good right now. As they drove through the evening traffic, Leona finally opened up about James's tactics. "Why didn't you tell me?" Isaac asked, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Because I needed to handle it myself," Leona explained. "Running to you would only make things worse." "He has no right to treat you this way," Isaac said, anger evident in his voice. "I'll put a stop to it tomorrow." "No," Leona said firmly. "That's exactly what he wants. To prove that I need your protection, that I can't succeed on my own merits." Isaac glanced at her, then back at the road. "Then what do you want to do?" Leona thought for a moment. "I want to outsmart him. Show him I'm not so easily broken." A slow smile spread across Isaac's face. "I have an idea, but it would require us working together, as equals. No CEO power moves, I promise." "I'm listening," Leona said, intrigued. "James is worried about appearances, about how our connection might affect the company. So let's address it head on. There's a charity gala next weekend. All the company executives will be there, major clients, even some press. Come with me." "As your date?" Leona asked, surprised. "As my guest," Isaac clarified. "We make one public appearance together, acknowledge our past connection openly but professionally, and remove all the mystery that's feeding the gossip. James loses his leverage when there's nothing to hide." Leona considered the strategy. It was bold, potentially risky, but it made sense. "You really think it would work?" "James knows how to manipulate from the shadows," Isaac explained. "He's not as effective when things are out in the open. Plus, I'd get to spend an evening with you, which is a win for me regardless." Leona couldn't help smiling at that. "One problem, I don't exactly have a gala-appropriate dress hanging in my closet." "That's the easy part," Isaac said confidently. "Leave it to me." "No," Leona said quickly. "No buying me dresses, Isaac. That crosses a line." Isaac thought for a moment. "Fair enough. What about Rita, your neighbor? Didn't you mention she works in fashion?" "She's a seamstress at a bridal shop," Leona confirmed. "Perfect. What if I provide the material and she creates something? That way we're supporting her business, not just buying you a gift." Leona had to admit it was a good compromise. "I'll talk to her." As they arrived at her apartment building, Isaac turned to her. "Leona, I need to know, are you sure about this? James won't back down easily. Things might get worse before they get better." Leona looked at the man beside her. Successful, powerful, yet still somehow the same boy who had believed in her dreams all those years ago. "I'm sure," she said softly. "Some things are worth fighting for." The words hung between them, laden with meaning that extended far beyond her job situation. Isaac reached across the car, his hand finding hers. "Yes," he agreed, his eyes never leaving hers. "They are." The week leading up to the gala was surprisingly peaceful at work. News that Leona would be attending as Isaac's guest had spread quickly, neutralizing some of James's more overt tactics. Her computer was mysteriously fixed, and while her desk remained in its isolated corner, at least her phone worked properly again. James himself maintained a cold distance, his disapproval evident in his eyes whenever they crossed paths, but he made no further moves against her. It was as if he was waiting, watching to see how the gala would unfold before planning his next strategy. Saturday evening arrived, and Leona stood in front of her mirror, hardly recognizing herself. Rita had outdone herself with the dress, a say. Stunning creation in deep emerald green that highlighted Leona's eyes and complemented her complexion perfectly. The design was elegant without being overtly sexy, striking the perfect balance between sophistication and approachability. "You look like you belong on a red carpet," Rita said, making final adjustments to the hem. "I feel like I'm playing dress-up," Leona admitted nervously. Rita straightened, putting her hands on Leona's shoulders. "Listen to me. You're beautiful, smart, and more than capable of holding your own with those corporate types. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise, not even yourself. A knock at the door announced Isaac's arrival. When Leona opened it, the look on his face made all her insecurities vanish. He stared at her with such open admiration that she felt herself blushing. "You look," he began, seemingly at a loss for words. "Incredible doesn't seem adequate." "Thank Rita," Leona said, gesturing to her friend. "She's the miracle worker." After proper introductions and Rita's not-so-subtle approval of Isaac, they headed out. Isaac had arranged for a car service, rather than arriving in his personal vehicle. Another thoughtful touch to keep the evening as unintimidating as possible for Leona. The gala was being held at one of the city's most prestigious hotels, with a red carpet entrance where photographers snapped pictures of arriving guests. Leona felt a moment of panic as they approached. "I didn't think about photographers," she whispered to Isaac. He squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Just smile and keep walking. They're mostly interested in clients more famous than me." But as they stepped onto the carpet, several cameras turned their way, and Leona heard Isaac's name being called out. One photographer moved closer. "Mr. Donovan, who's your date tonight?" Isaac smiled politely. "This is Leona Brooks, a longtime friend and valued member of our customer service team at Donovan Enterprises." The photographer looked momentarily confused by the straightforward introduction. No mystery, no scandal to uncover, then moved on to more promising targets. "See?" Isaac whispered. "Honesty deflates gossip." Inside the grand ballroom, the gala was in full swing. Elegant decorations, a string quartet playing softly in the corner, waiters circulating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Leona took a deep breath, overwhelmed by the opulence. "Remember," Isaac said gently, "you have as much right to be here as anyone." "Even in a borrowed dress?" she asked with a small smile. "Especially in that dress," he assured her. "Every woman here will be envious, and every man will wish they were me." His confidence bolstered her own, and as they moved through the crowd, Leona found herself relaxing. Isaac introduced her to colleagues and clients with the same straightforward explanation he'd given the photographer, a longtime friend and valued employee. Some seemed curious about their connection, but most accepted the introduction at face value. They were speaking with an important client when James approached, a stunning blonde woman on his arm. "Brother," James greeted Isaac with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "And Ms. Brooks, what a surprise to see you here." "Not a surprise at all, James," Isaac replied evenly. "I mentioned Leona would be joining me tonight." James introduced his companion as Victoria Lancaster, a model and socialite who seemed bored by the entire exchange. "Victoria, this is my brother, Isaac, and his friend Leona." "Charmed," Victoria said without enthusiasm, her eyes already scanning the room for more interesting encounters. "Leona is actually an old friend from Cedar Springs," Isaac explained, placing a subtle emphasis on their shared hometown. "We reconnected recently after 20 years. "How quaint," James commented. "A high school reunion of sorts." "Something like that," Leona said with a polite smile, refusing to be baited. James turned to the client Isaac had been speaking with. "Howard, I hope my brother has been telling you about the exciting developments in our Asian markets. The Tokyo office is exceeding all expectations." As the men fell into business talk, Victoria leaned toward Leona. "So you're the cleaning lady," she said in a low voice. "James told me all about you." Leona met her gaze steadily. "Former cleaning lady, current customer service representative, and you're—" "What exactly?" Besides James's date, Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. "I'm on the cover of this month's Fashion Forward, but I wouldn't expect you to know that." "You're right," Leona agreed pleasantly. "I don't usually read magazines where the main qualification for being featured is how you look in underwear. I prefer substance over style." Victoria's mouth opened in shock, just as James turned back to them. "Is everything all right, ladies?" "Perfectly fine," Leona assured him with a sweet smile. Victoria was just sharing details about her career. Isaac, who had overheard the exchange, couldn't quite hide his amusement. "If you'll excuse us, We should continue making the rounds. As they moved away, Isaac leaned close to whisper in Leona's ear. Substance over style? Too much, Leona asked, suddenly worried she'd overstepped. Perfect, Isaac assured her, his eyes dancing with admiration. Absolutely perfect. The rest of the evening flowed more smoothly. Leona found herself genuinely enjoying conversations with Isaac's colleagues, many of whom were surprisingly down-to-earth despite their wealth and status. When the band began playing after dinner, Isaac led her to the dance floor. I should warn you, Leona said as he took her in his arms. I haven't danced in years. Just follow my lead, he said softly. Trust me. And she did. As they moved together, to the music, the years seemed to fall away. Leona remembered their high school prom, how nervous she had been then, how gently Isaac had guided her through each dance. Now, as then, their bodies remembered each other, finding a natural rhythm together. You know, Isaac said, his voice low and intimate, this isn't how I imagined our reunion would go. Oh, how did you imagine it? Leona asked, looking up at him. Less complicated, he admitted with a rueful smile. No interfering brother, no office politics, just us finding our way back to each other. Is that what we're doing? Leona asked, softly. Finding our way back? Isaac's eyes grew serious. I hope so. Because being with you these past few weeks, even with all the complications, has made me happier than I've been in 20 years. The raw honesty in his voice touched something deep inside her. Leona felt the last of her defenses beginning to crumble. Isaac, she began, her voice barely audible above the music. Before she could finish, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. A disheveled man was arguing, loudly with the security guards, pushing past them into the ballroom. Where is he? The man shouted, his words slightly slurred. Where's Isaac Donovan? Isaac tensed, recognition flashing in his eyes. Stay here, he told Leona, moving away from her toward the disturbance. Michael, Isaac said calmly as he approached the man. What are you doing here? The man, Michael, laughed bitterly. What am I doing here? That's rich coming from the man who stole my company out from under me. A crowd had begun to gather, watching the confrontation with undisguised interest. Leona moved closer, concerned. For Isaac. You're drunk, Michael, Isaac said quietly. This isn't the time or place for this discussion. When is the time? Michael demanded, his voice rising. When you've taken everything I've worked for? When my wife has left me because I can't provide for her anymore? When is the right time, Isaac? James appeared beside his brother. Security. We'll handle this, he said, signaling to the guards who were approaching cautiously. No, Isaac held up a hand, stopping them. Michael, let's talk outside. Just you and me. But Michael wasn't interested in a private conversation. His eyes were wild with a mixture of alcohol and desperation. You think you're so perfect, don't you? The great Isaac Donovan, businessman of the year. But I know the truth. You build yourself up by destroying others. That's not true, Isaac said firmly. Your company was failing before the acquisition. I saved jobs, Michael. I offered you a position as a consultant, Michael spat. In my own company. No, you're no savior. You're a predator in an expensive suit. Leona watched the color drain from Isaac's face. This wasn't the Isaac she knew, or thought she knew. Could this man's accusations be true? James nodded to the security guards, who moved in and took Michael by the arms. Get him out of here, James ordered. As they dragged the still shouting man away, the ballroom fell into an uncomfortable silence. Then James, ever the master of damage control, stepped forward. Please, everyone, enjoy the rest of your evening. Just an unfortunate misunderstanding. The bar will remain open for another hour, and all proceeds go to children's education, a cause we can all drink to. The awkward laughter that followed was enough to break the tension, and gradually conversations resumed. But Leona could see the incident had shaken Isaac deeply. Are you okay? She asked when he returned to her side. Not really, he admitted, running a hand through his hair. I'm sorry you had to witness that. Who was he? Leona asked quietly. Isaac sighed. Michael Davis. We acquired his tech company last year when it was on the verge of bankruptcy. He's been struggling ever since. Was what he said true? Leona couldn't stop herself from asking. About you destroying others to build yourself. Hup? Pain flashed across Isaac's face. Is that what you think of me? I don't know what to think, Leona said honestly. The Isaac I knew would never hurt someone else for his own gain. But that was 20 years ago. People change. Isaac was silent for a long moment. I need some air, he finally said. Will you come with me? Leona nodded, following him through French doors that led to a terrace overlooking the hotel gardens. The night air was cool, a welcome relief from the emotional tension inside. Michael's company was innovative but poorly managed, Isaac began without preamble. They were 3 months from complete collapse when we stepped in. Yes, we got a good deal because of their desperate situation. Yes, we restructured and let some people go, but we saved over 200 jobs that would have been lost if the company had folded completely. And Michael, Leona asked. I offered him a position as a consultant because he's brilliant with product development, but terrible with business operations. He refused, couldn't accept that he had failed, needed someone to blame. Isaac turned to face her. Business can be ruthless, Leona. I won't pretend otherwise. But I've never deliberately set out to destroy someone for my own benefit. Never. The intensity in his eyes, the pain behind his words, convinced Leona he was telling the truth, at least his version of it. I believe you, she said softly. Relief washed over his face. Thank you. That means more than you know. But I understand him too, Leona added. What it's like to have dreams. Slip away to watch others succeed while you struggle. It's hard not to look for someone to blame. Isaac studied her face in the moonlight. Is that how you felt? When you saw me again? Did you blame me for the life you ended up with? It was. A question Leona hadn't fully confronted, even in her own mind. Maybe at first, she admitted. It was easier than accepting that life just isn't fair sometimes, that some people get lucky breaks and others don't. I got the lucky break, Isaac said quietly, the scholarship that took me away. But I lost the most important thing in my life when I left you behind. The raw honesty in his voice made Leona's heart ache. She stepped closer to him, drawn by a force she couldn't resist. Maybe we both lost something important, but maybe it's not too late to find it again. Isaac's eyes searched hers, hope and uncertainty battling in his expression. Leona, I need to know. After everything, James's interference, tonight's scene, the complications between us, do you regret reconnecting with me? Leona took a deep breath, ready at last to be as honest with him as he had been with her. No, she said firmly, I don't regret it. Despite everything, these past weeks have reminded me what it feels like to truly connect with someone, to be seen for who I really am. Isaac reached for her hand, his touch warm and familiar. I see you, Leona, I always have. In the moonlight, with the distant sound of music floating from the ballroom, Leona made a decision. She leaned forward and kissed him gently at first, then with growing confidence as he responded. 20 years of separation dissolved in that moment, replaced by a connection that felt both new and achingly familiar. When they finally pulled apart, Isaac's eyes were shining with emotion. I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you, again. Me too, Leona admitted with a smile. I just wasn't ready to admit it. As they stood together under the stars, Leona felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not just for a potential relationship with Isaac, but for herself. For the possibility that sometimes life offered second chances when you least expected them. What neither of them noticed was James standing in the shadows of the terrace, watching. Their intimate moment with calculating eyes. His expression darkened as he turned away, pulling out his phone and making a call. It's me, he said quietly. I need that information we discussed. Yes, all of it. It's time to end this distraction. Once and for all. Inside the ballroom, the party continued. Outside, the seeds of a new conflict were being sown. One that would test not only Leona and Isaac's rekindling relationship, but the very foundations of trust they were trying to rebuild. The Monday following the gala, Leona arrived at work with a lightness in her step that hadn't been there before. Her kiss with Isaac had changed something fundamental between them. crossing a threshold from past to possible future. They had spent Sunday together, walking through Central Park, talking for hours about everything and nothing, rediscovering each other as the people they had become. As she settled at her desk, Leona noticed her colleagues treating her differently, some with new respect, others with barely concealed curiosity. News of her appearance at the gala with Isaac had spread throughout the company, transforming her overnight from the former cleaning lady to someone of interest. Mark stopped by her desk mid-morning, a friendly smile on his face. "Nice weekend." Leona admitted, unable to completely hide her happiness. "You've got everyone talking," he said, lowering his voice. "Not in a bad way, mostly. People are just surprised. No one's ever seen Isaac Donovan bring a date to a company function before." Leona felt a blush creeping up her cheeks. "We're old friends?" "Right," Mark said with a knowing smile. "Friends. Well, whatever you are, it's nice to see the boss looking happy for a change. Just be careful, okay? Office politics can get messy." "In a hurry." Leona appreciated his concern. "I'll keep that in mind." Around noon, Leona received an unexpected message from Patricia, Isaac's assistant, asking her to come to the executive floor for lunch. Curious and slightly nervous, Leona took the elevator up. Patricia greeted her with a warm smile. "Leona, thank you for coming. Mr. Donovan asked me to bring you to his private dining room." "Private? Dining room?" Leona repeated, surprised. Patricia nodded. "For meetings with important clients or special guests." She led Leona to a beautiful room with a small table set for two, floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a stunning view of the city. Isaac was waiting, his face lighting up when he saw her. "Is this okay?" he asked once Patricia had left them alone. "I wanted to see you, but I didn't want to cause more gossip by going down to the cafeteria." "It's fine," Leona assured him, though she felt slightly out of place in the elegant setting. "But people will still talk." Isaac shrugged. "They'll talk regardless. After last night, I wanted to make sure you were okay, that you didn't have any regrets." Leona sat down across from him. "No regrets," she said with a soft smile. "But I am worried about James. He didn't look happy when we left the gala." "James is always unhappy about something," Isaac said, though concern flickered in his eyes. "But you're right to be cautious. My brother can be resourceful when he wants something. And he wants me gone," Leona stated simply. "He wants what he thinks is best for the company," Isaac corrected. "He just fails to see that controlling my personal life isn't his job." They enjoyed their lunch, keeping the conversation light, careful to maintain a professional distance despite the private setting. Leona was acutely aware that their relationship existed in a delicate balance, personal feelings on one side, professional realities on the other. As she prepared to return to her department, Isaac caught her hand. "Dinner tonight? My place?" The invitation surprised her. They had been meeting in public places or at her apartment, neutral ground. His home represented another step, another threshold to cross. "Your place," she repeated. "It's time you saw how I live," he said with a gentle smile. "I've seen your world. It's only fair you see mine." Leona hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but I can't stay late. Early meeting tomorrow." The look that passed between them acknowledged the excuse for what it was, a safety measure, a way to maintain control over a situation that was increasingly drawing her into unknown territory. Isaac's penthouse was exactly what Leona had imagined, and simultaneously nothing like she expected. The space was undeniably luxurious, spacious rooms, designer furniture, art on the walls that probably cost more than her yearly salary. But there was also a surprising warmth to it, personal touches that reflected the man rather than his wealth. "Not what you expected?" Isaac asked, watching her reaction as she took in her surroundings. "I'm not sure what I expected," Leona admitted. He gave her a tour, pointing out little details, a painting by a local artist from Cedar Springs, books they had both loved in high school, photographs of places that had meaning to him. The final stop was the terrace, a stunning outdoor space with comfortable seating and an unobstructed view of the city lights. "This is where I come to think," Isaac said as they stood side by side at the railing, the cool evening breeze playing with Leona's hair. "Sometimes Late at night, I look out at all those lights and wonder about the stories behind them. All those lives, all those dreams, and heartbreaks, Leona added softly. Isaac turned to her. Yes, those too. He hesitated, then continued. I used to look out there and feel alone, even with all my success, until you came back into my life. The sincerity in his voice touched her deeply. Leona found herself leaning toward him, drawn by the same magnetic pull she had felt at 18, now strengthened by the adults they had become. Their kiss was gentle at first, a continuation of the moment they had shared at the gala, but it quickly deepened, years of separation and longing, fueling an intensity that surprised them both. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. I've missed you, he whispered. Not just since we reconnected, but for 20 years. Leona closed her eyes, absorbing his words, feeling the truth of them in her own heart. I've missed you too. They prepared dinner together in Isaac's state-of-the-art kitchen, the domesticity of the act creating yet another bond between them. As they ate, they shared more stories of their time apart, filling in the gaps of 20 years with laughter and occasional tears. Why did you never marry? Leona asked as they settled. On the couch with glasses of wine after dinner, Isaac was quiet for a moment, swirling the dark liquid in his glass. I came close once about 10 years ago. Caroline was perfect on paper, educated, sophisticated, from a good family, the kind of wife a CEO should have. What happened? 3 days before the wedding, I called it off. He looked at her directly. Because I realized I was marrying the idea of a wife, not the woman I loved. It wouldn't have been fair to either of us. And since then, Leona prompted. Since then, I've been married to my work, he admitted. Until I saw you again, I had convinced myself that was enough. Leona understood that feeling all too well. The gradual acceptance of a life less than what you had once dreamed. The quiet resignation that some happiness wasn't meant for you. What about you? Isaac asked gently. You mentioned almost getting married once. Leona nodded, memories washing over her. Robert. He was kind, stable, everything I thought I needed after years of struggling alone. But in the end, I couldn't do it. He deserved someone who loved him completely, not someone who was settling for security. Isaac reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. And now? Are you settling for anything? The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. Leona considered her answer carefully. No, she finally said, not anymore. Later, when the night had grown late and Leona knew she should leave but couldn't bring herself to break the spell between them, Isaac asked the question that had been hovering unspoken all evening. Stay, he said simply. Stay with me tonight. Leona felt her heart racing. Isaac, just to sleep, he clarified quickly. I'm not presuming anything more, I'm not ready for this night to end. The vulnerability in his eyes, the same boy she had fallen in love with all those years ago, now visible in the man before her, made her decision for her. I'll stay, she whispered. They fell asleep in each other's arms, fully clothed, the comfort of their connection more intimate than any physical act could have been. For the first time in 20 years, both felt completely at peace. The next morning, Leona woke early, disoriented momentarily by the unfamiliar surroundings. Isaac was still sleeping, his face relaxed and younger looking in repose. She slipped quietly from the bed, gathered her things and left a note on the pillow. She needed to go home and change before work, but more than that, she needed a moment to process everything that was happening between them. The early morning streets were quiet as her taxi made its way to her apartment. Leona felt a strange mixture of joy and apprehension. What was happening with Isaac felt right, felt like coming home after a long journey, but the practical realities of their different worlds remained, and James's opposition cast a shadow over their budding relationship. At her apartment building, Leona paid the driver and headed inside, her mind still full of Isaac and the night they had shared. She was so distracted that she almost didn't notice the woman sitting in the shabby lobby, a magazine open on her lap. Victoria. Leona stopped, surprised to see James's date from the gala in her building. Victoria Lancaster looked up, her perfect features arranged in a sympathetic expression That immediately put Leona on guard. "Leona, good morning. I was hoping to catch you before work." "How did you know where I live?" Leona asked, suspicion rising. Victoria waved away the question. "James mentioned it. May we talk? It's important." Every instinct told Leona to refuse, but curiosity won out. "5 minutes, I need to get ready for work." They went up to Leona's apartment, the contrast between her modest space and Isaac's penthouse startlingly evident. Victoria glanced around with poorly concealed disdain before perching on the edge of Leona's worn sofa. "What's this about?" Leona asked, remaining standing. Victoria reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a folder. "I thought you should see these, for your own good." Leona took the folder cautiously. Inside were photographs, Isaac with various women over what appeared to be the past several years. Charity events, business functions, casual dinners. In each he was smiling, his arm around a different, beautiful, sophisticated woman. "What is this supposed to be?" Leona asked, her voice steady despite the unease growing in her stomach. "Reality," Victoria said simply. "Isaac Donovan has a type, educated, wealthy, connected women who enhance his image. Women from his world." She paused meaningfully. "Not women who clean his floors." Leona closed the folder. "If James sent you to intimidate me, you're wasting your time." Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "James? No. This is woman to woman. I've dated men like Isaac, men who occasionally slum it for the thrill, for the ego boost of being a savior. But they always return to their own kind." "You don't know anything about me and Isaac," Leona said firmly. "I know he'll hurt you," Victoria replied, her voice softening with what seemed like genuine concern. "Maybe not intentionally, but inevitably. The novelty will wear off, and he'll remember that his reputation, his business, his entire life exists in a world you can't truly enter." Leona felt a flicker of doubt, but pushed it aside. "Thank you for your concern, but I think you should go." Victoria stood, smoothing her expensive dress. "Keep the photos, and when it ends, because it will, remember that some wounds are easier to heal when you see them coming." After Victoria left, Leona sat on her sofa, the folder heavy in her hands. She knew she should throw it away, ignore the seeds of doubt Victoria had tried to plant, but instead she opened it again, studying each photograph, each smiling woman on Isaac's arm. Had he felt something for them too? Had he made them feel special, only to eventually return to his real life, his real world? Was she just the latest in a line of temporary diversions? By the time Leona arrived at work, her mind was a battlefield of trust and doubt. She had left Isaac's bed feeling certain of their connection, of the path they were forging together. Now uncertainty crept in, Victoria's words echoing in her thoughts. The morning passed in a blur. Around 11, she received a text from Isaac. "Last night was perfect. Dinner again tonight." Leona stared at the message, unable to formulate a response. Before she could decide, Mark appeared at her desk, his expression serious. "Leona, James. Donovan wants to see you in his office now." Her stomach tightened with apprehension. "Did he say what it's about?" Mark shook his head. "No, but he seemed determined." The walk to James's office felt like a march to the gallows. Leona steeled herself, preparing for whatever new tactic he had devised to drive her away from the company and from Isaac. James was standing by the window when she entered, his back to the door. He turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Brooks, thank you for coming promptly." He gestured to a chair. "Please sit." Leona remained standing. "I'd prefer to stand, if it's all the same to you." A hint of a smile touched James's lips. "As you wish." He moved to his desk, picking up a folder identical to the one Victoria had given her. "I assume my associate already paid you a visit this morning, so Victoria had been working for James after all." "Yes, she did. Your tactics are getting more desperate, Mr. Donovan." "Not desperate," James corrected. "Strategic." Victoria presented one perspective. "I'd like to offer another." He opened the folder, but instead of photographs, it contained financial documents. "These are the current projections for Donovan Enterprises over the next 5 years. Notice the upward trajectory." He flipped to another page. And these are the projections if certain distractions continue to compromise leadership focus, the four. Second graph showed a significant decline. Leona knew it was a scare tactic, but the implication was clear. "You're suggesting that my relationship with Isaac will harm the company," she stated flatly. "I'm stating a fact," James replied coolly. "My brother has worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to have it all undermined by an ill-advised romance with an employee, particularly one with your background." Anger flared in Leona. "My background? You mean being poor? Working honest jobs to survive? Those are character flaws in your world, aren't they?" James sighed, as if dealing with a child who couldn't understand basic concepts. "This isn't personal, Ms. Brooks. It's business. Isaac may be blinded by nostalgia or misplaced guilt over your circumstances, but I see the bigger picture." "And what picture is that?" Leona challenged. "A temporary infatuation that, when it inevitably ends, will leave both my brother and this company vulnerable." James closed the folder. "Thousands of employees depend on Donovan Enterprises. Their livelihoods, their families, their futures. Are you willing to put all that at risk for a romance that can't possibly last?" Leona felt the weight of his words pressing down on her. "You don't know that it won't last." "Don't I?" James raised an eyebrow. "Tell me, have you ever moved in Isaac's social circles, conversed about global markets over cocktails with board members, hosted charity galas for the elite? That's his world, Miss Brooks. A world where you'll always be the outsider, the curiosity, the project he took on out of some misguided sense of rectifying the past." Each word hit its mark with painful accuracy, echoing Leona's own deepest fears. Victoria's photos, James's cutting analysis, the undeniable reality of the vast differences between her life and Isaac's, all coalesced into a heavy knot of doubt. "I think we're done here," Leona said, her voice remarkably steady despite her inner turmoil. "One last thing," James said as she turned to leave. "I'm prepared to offer you a generous severance package if you resign today. Enough to finish your degree, perhaps start fresh in another city. A clean break would be best for everyone involved, don't you think?" Leona paused at the door. "You really believe I can be bought off?" "Everyone has a price, Ms. Brooks. It's just a matter of finding the right currency." James slid a check across his desk. "Yours happens to be monetary. My brother's is his reputation and legacy. Think about which you value more, your feelings for Isaac or his future." Leona left without taking the check, her mind racing. Though she hated to admit it, some of what James said made sense. She and Isaac lived in different worlds. Their reunion had been passionate, intense, fueled by memories and regrets. But was it sustainable in the cold light of reality? The rest of the day passed in a fog. Isaac texted twice more, his messages growing increasingly concerned at her lack of response. Finally, as the workday ended, Leona made a decision. She texted back, "Can we meet at the coffee shop where we first talked?" 7 p.m. His reply came immediately. "Is everything okay?" She didn't answer, afraid that any more communication would weaken her resolve. The coffee shop was quiet when Leona arrived, just a few patrons scattered at tables. She chose the same corner booth where she and Isaac had sat weeks ago, when their reconnection was new and uncertain. Isaac arrived 5 minutes early, his face lined with worry. He slid into the seat across from her, immediately reaching for her hands. "What's wrong?" he asked. "I've been worried all day." Leona gently pulled her hands away. "We need to talk, Isaac." He studied her face, reading the seriousness in her expression. "James got to you, didn't he? What did he do?" "It's not just James," Leona said quietly. "Though yes, he made some points today that I can't ignore." "Whatever he said, it's manipulation," Isaac insisted. "He doesn't understand what's between us." "Maybe. He sees it more clearly than we do," Leona countered. "We've been caught up in the past, in what might have been. But we live in the present, Isaac, in different worlds." Isaac's expression hardened. "So that's it? You're letting my brother dictate our relationship?" "I'm being realistic," Leona said, pain evident in her voice. "Last night was beautiful. Being with you again feels right in a way nothing has in 20 years. But then I look at the facts. Your life, my life, the company, the expectations. It's not just about us. It's about the hundreds of people who depend on Donovan Enterprises, about your legacy, about practical realities we've been ignoring. I don't care about any of that, Isaac said fiercely. I care about you, about us. But you should care, Leona insisted. You've built something important, something that matters to a lot of people. I can't be the reason it suffers. Isaac leaned forward, his eyes intense. Is this really about the company? Or is it about you not believing we can make this work? The question struck at the heart of Leona's doubts. She looked down at her hands. Maybe both. I saw the photos, Isaac. All those women over the years, women from your world. What makes me different? What makes you think this isn't just another temporary connection? Photos? What photos? Isaac looked genuinely confused. Victoria brought them to my apartment this morning. You with different women, all of them looking like they belonged on your arm at fancy events. Understanding dawned in Isaac's eyes, followed by anger. James, he muttered. He's really pulling out all the stops. Were they real? Leona pressed. The photos? Probably, Isaac admitted. I've attended countless functions over the years, sometimes with dates arranged by my PR team. But none of them meant anything, Leona. They were companions for events, not relationships. And what am I? Leona asked. The question that had been haunting her all day, finally spoken aloud. The working-class girl who makes you feel connected to your humble beginnings. The one who reminds you of a simpler time before wealth and power. What happens when that novelty wears off? Isaac's face reflected hurt and frustration. Is that what you think? That you're some kind of novelty to me? I think we got caught up in reconnecting, in righting past wrongs, Leona said softly. But the reality is, your life is up there. She gestured vaguely toward the ceiling, indicating the world of wealth and privilege. And mine is down here. Maybe we should have left the past in the past. Isaac was silent for a long moment, his eyes never leaving her face. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but intense. 20 years ago, when I left Cedar Springs on that scholarship, I promised myself I would become someone worthy of returning for you. Every step I took, every decision I made, was with the thought that someday I'd go back and find you. When your letters stopped coming, when I thought you had moved on, I pushed forward with nothing but ambition to fill the void you left. Leona felt tears forming, but held them back. Isaac, let me finish, he said gently. When I saw you in my building that day, it felt like the universe was giving us a second chance. Not because of nostalgia or guilt or some misguided attempt to recapture the past, but because in that moment I recognized the other half of myself, the half I've been missing for 20 years. He reached across the table, taking her hands in his despite her earlier retreat. I don't care about different worlds or what anyone thinks is appropriate. I care about you, the woman you were, the woman you are now. If that means changes in my life, in the company, and everything I've built, then so be it. None of it matters without you. Tears spilled down Leona's cheeks. It's not that simple. It can be, Isaac insisted. We make it simple by choosing each other, by refusing to let anyone or anything come between us again. Leona wanted desperately to believe him, to trust that their connection was strong enough to overcome the practical obstacles, the social divisions, the expectations of others. But James's words echoed in her mind, along with her own lifelong insecurities. I need time, she finally said, to think, to be sure this is right, for both of us. Isaac's face fell, but he nodded slowly. Time, he repeated. How much time? Don't know, Leona admitted. But I can't make this decision based on emotion alone. There's too much at stake. Okay, Isaac said, though the word clearly cost him. Take the time you need, but know this, I'll be waiting. However long it takes, whatever you decide, my feelings won't change. As they parted outside the coffee shop, their goodbye felt heavier than any they had shared before, weighted with unspoken fears, with the possibility that this separation might become permanent. Leona watched Isaac walk away, her heart breaking even as her mind insisted she was doing the right thing. A week passed with no contact between them. Leona threw herself into her work, staying late at the office, taking on additional projects to keep her mind occupied. To her surprise, James left her alone, perhaps believing his tactics had worked, that she had ended things with Isaac for good. She hadn't seen Isaac in the building, and office gossip suggested he was away on business. The distance helped her think more clearly, to separate emotion from practicality, to weigh what she truly wanted against what might be best for everyone involved. On Friday afternoon, Leona was working late again when Mark appeared at her desk. "Don't you ever go home?" he asked with a friendly smile. Leona returned his smile wearily. "Home is just an empty apartment. At least here I feel useful." Mark leaned against her desk. "You know, for someone who supposedly just ended a relationship with the CEO, you don't seem very relieved. If anything, you look miserable." "Is it that obvious?" Leona asked, surprised by his perception. "Only to those of us who have made the same mistake," Mark said cryptically, "giving up something real because it seemed too complicated." Leona looked at him curiously. "What's your story?" Mark sighed. "Long-term relationship, different religious backgrounds, families opposed. We let it break us apart, thinking we were being practical, mature. Biggest regret of my life." "What happened?" Leona asked. "She married someone her family approved of, has 2 kids now, and I'm still alone, wondering what might have been if I'd had the courage to fight for what mattered." Mark gave her a meaningful look. "Don't make my mistake, Leona. Life's too short for practical heartbreak." His words stayed with Leona as she finally headed home, the empty office echoing with the weight of decisions unmade, words unspoken. Outside, rain had begun to fall, matching her melancholy mood. As her bus made its way through the wet streets, Leona found herself thinking about the past week, about the emptiness she had felt since walking away from Isaac. She had told herself she needed time to think, but perhaps what she really needed was the courage to believe that some connections were worth fighting for, regardless of the obstacles. By the time she reached her apartment building, Leona had made a decision. She would call Isaac tomorrow, ask to meet, tell him that she was ready to really try to build something together. Not because of their past, but because of who they were now and who they could be to each other. As she entered the shabby lobby, soaked from the short walk from the bus stop, Leona was startled to find Rita waiting for her. "There you are," Rita exclaimed. "I've been trying to reach you for hours." "My phone died," Leona explained. "What's wrong?" Rita's expression was urgent. "It's all over the news. Donovan Enterprises. There's been some kind of scandal, accusations of fraud. They're saying the company might collapse." Leona felt the blood drain from her face. "Isaac," she whispered. "Is he okay?" "I don't know," Rita admitted. "But from what I saw on the news, it's his brother who's at the center of it all." Rushing to Rita's apartment, they turned on the television. The business news was indeed covering the story. Allegations that James Donovan had been falsifying reports, hiding losses and misrepresenting the company's financial health to investors for years. Sources close to the company suggest CEO Isaac Donovan may have been unaware of his brother's activities, the reporter was saying. But questions remain about how such extensive fraud could have occurred without his knowledge. Donovan Enterprises. Stock has plummeted, and analysts predict potential bankruptcy if the allegations prove true. Leona watched in horror, her mind racing. Was this why James had been so desperate to remove any distractions that might lead Isaac to look more closely at the company's operations? Had he been using Isaac's trust, his focus on building rather than monitoring, to hide his own unethical activities? Without hesitation, Leona grabbed her still damp coat. "I have to go to him." "In this weather? At this hour?" Rita protested. "Leona, this is a corporate scandal. What can you possibly do?" "I don't know," Leona admitted. "But I know he needs someone right now, someone who cares about him, not his money or his company or his reputation. He needs me." The trip to Isaac's penthouse took nearly an hour in the stormy weather, taxis unwilling to go far in the downpour. By the time Leona arrived, she was drenched and shivering but determined. The doorman recognized her from her previous visit and, after a quick call upstairs, allowed her to go up. Her heart pounded as the elevator ascended, uncertainty mixing with her determination. What if Isaac didn't want to see her? What if he blamed her somehow for distracting him when his brother was undermining the company? The elevator doors opened directly into Isaac's penthouse. The space was dark except for a single lamp in the living room where Isaac sat alone, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his expression bleak. He looked up as she entered, surprise momentarily replacing the devastation on his face. "Leona, what are you doing here?" "I saw the news," she said simply, moving toward him. "I needed to make sure you were okay." Isaac laughed bitterly. "Okay? My brother has been systematically defrauding investors for years. The company I built might not survive. My employees could lose their jobs. Okay isn't anywhere on the spectrum of what I am right now." Leona sat beside him on the couch, her wet clothes soaking into the expensive fabric. "I'm so sorry, Isaac." He looked at her, really looked at her, taking in her drenched appearance, the concern in her eyes. Something in his expression softened. "You came all this way in this weather just to check on me?" "Of course I did," Leona said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I care about you." Isaac set down his glass, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I should have seen it, all the signs were there. James's resistance to detailed audits, his insistence on handling certain accounts personally, his obsession with keeping up appearances." His voice broke slightly. "I trusted him completely, my own brother." "You couldn't have known," Leona insisted. "He deliberately kept you in the dark." "A CEO should know everything about his company," Isaac said bitterly. "I was too focused on growth, on the future, on—" He looked at her. "On us." Leona felt a stab of guilt. "Is that why you think he was so determined to end our relationship? Because you might start paying closer attention to the company?" Isaac nodded slowly. "It makes sense now. Your presence made me see things differently, question things I had accepted for years. James must have realized the threat that posed." They sat in silence for a moment, the rain beating against the windows, the only sound in the vast space. Finally, Leona spoke. "What happens now?" Isaac sighed deeply. "Best case scenario? I cooperate fully with investigators, show that I was uninvolved and try to rebuild from the wreckage. Worst case? Criminal charges, bankruptcy, the end of everything I've built. And James? Already fled the country, apparently. Left me to face the consequences alone." The hurt in Isaac's voice was palpable. Leona reached for his hand, entwining her fingers with his. "You're not alone." He looked at their joined hands, then up at her face. "I thought I'd lost you. After our talk, at the coffee shop when you said you needed time, I was afraid you'd decided we couldn't work." "I was afraid too," Leona admitted. "Afraid of not belonging in your world, of holding you back, of being a distraction from what mattered. But I was wrong, Isaac. What matters isn't your company, or your status, or the different worlds we come from. What matters is this," she squeezed his hand, "us, supporting each other, being there when it counts." A flicker of hope appeared in Isaac's eyes. "Does this mean you're willing to try? Despite everything? Because I have to warn you, my life is about to become very complicated, very public, and potentially very difficult." Leona smiled gently. "My life has been complicated and difficult for 20 years. I'm not afraid of that. I'm only afraid of walking away from something real because I was too scared to believe in it." Isaac pulled her close, his arms encircling her despite her wet clothes. "I don't deserve you," he murmured against her hair. "Probably not," Leona agreed with a soft laugh. "But you've got me anyway." They stayed that way for a long time, holding each other as the storm raged outside, a physical manifestation of the turbulence that lay ahead. But for the first time in years, perhaps in their entire lives, neither felt alone in facing whatever came next. The following months were indeed difficult. Investigators swarmed Donovan Enterprises, examining every transaction, questioning every decision. Isaac spent endless hours with lawyers and auditors, fighting to save what could be saved of the company he had built. Leona stayed by his side through all of it, offering support, perspective, and occasionally much-needed distraction from the stress. She continued her work in customer service, refusing special treatment despite her relationship with Isaac becoming public knowledge. Slowly, painfully, the truth emerged. James had indeed been manipulating financial records for years, hiding losses from bad investments while presenting a picture of uninterrupted growth to the board and investors. His motives appeared to be a combination of pride, fear of disappointing his brother, and eventually, desperation to cover his earlier deceptions. Though the scandal dealt a severe blow to Donovan Enterprises, Isaac's cooperation with authorities and his obvious shock at his brother's actions helped mitigate some of the damage. The company survived, though significantly downsized and restructured. Through it all, Isaac and Leona's relationship deepened, strengthened by adversity rather than broken by it. The artificial barriers between their worlds fell away in the face of real challenges that required them to see each other as they truly were. Not as CEO and employee, not as the wealthy man and the struggling woman, but as two people committed to facing life together. 1 year after the scandal broke, on a quiet evening in the park, where they had spent so many hours talking during that difficult time, Isaac asked Leona to marry him. "I don't have as much to offer as I once did," he said, holding a simple ring that cost a fraction of what he could have afforded in his previous life.